Hello and welcome to the Valley. Today I am your host, Janet Michael. It is VDOT Day on the show. Ken Slack is joining me on Zooms. He is the communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. We get road update projects. He educates me on the random weird traffic questions that I have. Thankfully for everyone listening today, Ken, you did all of that before we started recording, so we don't have to bore anybody today.
You saying that just now reminds me, our district traffic engineer once told us, because every time he goes to Walmart or a soccer game or whatever, he gets peppered with questions. And he says, everybody's a traffic engineer. I think a lot of us think that, hey, if we drive, we know how it should work. And believe it or not, there's usually a reason. You may not always like it or agree with it, but there's a reason for it.
So I understand that Rockland Road is now open to traffic.
If you haven't been out there in a few years, man, it looks so much different. Those of you who used to get stuck by the trains crossing the Norfolk Southern line, getting close to the Virginia Inland Port, there were some times when you could be sitting there for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and it's not their fault because there's a lot of traffic going in and out of the inland port. Sometimes the trains are moving very slowly or stopped. But we did get some federal money several years back to rectify that situation by building a bridge over the railway. It's what they call an elevated crossing rather than the at-grade crossing. But it opened up to traffic in mid-July. The project is still technically continuing. By the end of September, it should be finished up. There's always a few punch list items. It's kind of like when a house is built, but we still have to do some punch list things that the contractor needs to take care of. And that's where we are right now. Might be some occasional shoulder closures or things like that. But for all intents and purposes, this project's finished. And I think folks that see it and see the difference out there are going to be amazed at just how different it is.
I have not been out there in forever and
Field trip
made a
time, yeah.
mental note after our show back in July. I need to go out there so that I can see it and have a better understanding when we talk about it. And yet here I sit having still not gone out Rockland Road, but I've seen the photos. It looks really cool.
It's impressive. I was able to go out there back in February or so when they were setting the bridge beams, and they have these massive cranes, and it was a just a clear blue sky day, and it was very impressive to watch. It's a secondary road that had what at least looks like a small amount of traffic and an at-grade crossing. But this is one of those special cases where there are times when the trains were coming through and sometimes stopped. The fire department's not too far away, or you get an emergency call on the other side of the tracks. There were some definite good reasons for building this project. And so we were really fortunate to be able to get the federal funds to help make that happen.
When you talk about federal funds, that's how a lot of these projects get done. You have to say, hey, we need to do this infrastructure fix or replacement or whatever. And then you get money from the federal government. Sometimes it comes from the state, but there's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to projects like that.
One of the guys that works in what they call our programming section, and that's basically putting money toward projects. But he always referred to colors of money because sometimes a single project can have a dozen different financial sources, all kinds of different state and federal grants, local matches. It can get very complicated, especially when we're talking about bridges. A lot of times, at least some of that funding comes from the federal level. And then, of course, interstate and some of our primaries get federal funding too. Some projects are just state and sometimes a mix of state and local funding too. So it really varies wildly. And Rockland is perhaps a good example of how federal funds really helped us a lot. It actually came from, I can't remember the exact federal agency, but it's actually their maritime fund. But it was basically an economic development fund at the federal level. That project would have been really difficult to get done under the Smart Scale program because it was difficult to quantify the safety benefits of the project, the reducing traffic congestion, things like that. Some of the traditional measures that we use to help score and balance and prioritize projects. It's a little bit difficult to do in a really unusual case like Rockland Road. So it was very helpful to have those funds come in from the feds. And it's a great project, but it was difficult to see something like that competing with some of the other needs that we have in our part of the state.
Yeah, you've got to be really creative sometimes. And I guess it makes sense from the perspective of that rail was running to the inland port, which, even though it's not really near the water, is still maritime. Is that how you connect
Yeah,
all
that
those dots?
it's it is definitely complicated, and that's probably about as far as I should go down that road. But in this case, we're just happy to have it. VDOT administered the project, and I'm sure folks that drive through there and get a chance to use that new bridge, and hopefully that will be you too, Janet, soon. will see the benefits of that project.
I would guess that something like widening 81 at Strasburg is got a little bit more straightforward type of funding since that is a major interstate.
I'm just going to say yes, because the widening on I-81 in Strasburg, the southbound widening, that's part of our I-81 corridor improvement program. We thankfully have a nice short name, Improve 81 for it. And again, there's a bit of a formula here. Part of the money for the I-81 corridor improvement program comes from what you're paying for it at the pump. The cities and the counties along the I-81 corridor, all the way from Winchester down to Bristol, state line to state line, the gas taxes that you pay, a little bit of that is sliced off and goes to improvements on the interstate. There's also a statewide interstate fund that helps pay for it, as well as some of the other fees that some of the trucking companies use and things like that. But these are dedicated funds that go strictly to 81 improvements. And if you've lived in the Shenandoah Valley for years or even decades, you know that there were times in the past where VDOT and other entities really wanted to do something with I-81 because we have known for years that there are certain parts of the interstate that could use an extra lane here or there, interchange improvements, truck climbing lanes, projects like that. But what's different now is that we have a dedicated funding source and have since 2019. And now we're really starting to see the benefits of that by getting some of these major projects ground broken, and in some cases already complete. It's finally happening out there, and it required that dedicated funding source to make it happen.
Well, I can tell you that while I am more than happy to get in my car and go check out the new bridge on Rockland Road, I am solely going to have to depend on you to keep me updated on the 81 widening at Strasburg because I don't drive on 81. So you're going to be my sole source of information about where we are progress wise with that project.
That's quite all right. I know you have my cell phone number. I'm not going to share it right here, but I will say that there are times, even on the weekend, where I'll get a random call. Hey, can you tell me whether there's any traffic right now in the Harrisonburg area? I was like,
Dude, check a
"Well,
camera. There are
we
cameras
we have
everywhere.
resources for that. 511virginia.org. Yeah, we have things for that, but it's okay.
Has that project started?
The Strasburg, what? You really
Yeah.
don't drive on the interstate, do you? Yes, the contractor's well underway with the southbound widening on 81. This is through the Strasburg area. It's about a 4 mile long project. It basically picks up just a little bit south of the I-66 interchange, goes across the Cedar Creek Bridge there. We're replacing that bridge, the southbound bridge, goes past exit 298 there at Route 11, also widening the southbound bridge over the CSX Railway, goes past the exit 296 there at Route 55, and goes for about a mile past that before it wraps up and goes back down to the 2 lanes. On the northbound side, there's actually a sound barrier wall because there's a lot of housing along that side of the interstate. So yes, Janet, it is happening. And
I
uh,
can't see it from Route 11. It doesn't exist to me.
I got you. We awarded it. When I say we, the Commonwealth Transportation Board actually awarded the contract for that right around the end of 2024. Contractors got cranked up in the early part of the year, and they are well underway now. But there's still a lot of work to be done out there. It's going to be about another 3 more years before they're finished.
That's the other thing that we've talked about in the past too is that you got to have some patience when these projects, particularly projects of that magnitude, are happening. They're not going to happen overnight, and you do your best, but these projects take some time.
They do. And I think a lot of folks don't realize, I didn't before I started working for VDOT, just how much goes into even before you start seeing the bulldozers and the backhoes out there. There's a ton of environmental work that goes on, stormwater retention, right away, relocating utilities, sometimes underground, sometimes power and other kinds of utility lines up above. There is a ton that goes into it. We have time of year restrictions. If you need to widen or replace a bridge, but there are roosting bats or certain types of birds that are nesting in that bridge. There are certain times of year you can't touch that bridge. Same thing with trees of a certain diameter on their trunk. So there's all kinds of things that go into this, and I see the look on your face. There's a lot to it. And bridges create a challenge during construction as well, because we can't exactly just close southbound 81 in order to replace a bridge. We've got to run 2 lanes of traffic, at least during the peak hours. Yes, we can close a single lane during overnight hours sometimes, but it's always more challenging and more time consuming to widen or replace a bridge when it's under traffic. That adds a lot of time to a big project like that one.
I remember when you were replacing the bridges going into Front Royal. Doug Stanley and I had so many
Oh man.
conversations about those bridges. And I remember when he first came on the show and he said, "This is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do." And I could not wrap my head around, how am I going to cross the bridge if the bridge isn't there anymore? And he said, "That's not exactly how it works, Janet." It was tenuous at times, but then once it was done, it was like, I'm sorry, what was this, a mess? Did I have to sit in traffic? I don't remember any of that. I am already on the other side of this bridge.
Yeah, and those were big projects, especially that bridge over the South Fork. That was during sort of my early years at VDOT, and that was an amazing one to watch. Just the width of it and the length of it. That is the longest bridge in our district at about 1,900 feet. It's getting close to some of those kind of bridges in Hampton Roads that just go on and on. It was a huge project, and building that thing so that you've got multiple lanes still working in traffic while you're building the new portion of the road and then shifting traffic. And I'm amazed by the planning and the design and the execution that the contractors that partner with us, all of the work that goes into these things to make these projects happen and be successful and to last for the better part of a century once they're finished.
Right? Yeah, because you're not building
Yeah.
these to just last 10 years.
No, no, and I don't think anybody would want us to spend tens of millions of dollars on a bridge if it was only going to be there for another decade or so. For the most part, the bridges that we're building these days are going to last 75 to 100 years.
Let's take a break. When
Mhm.
we come back, we talked a little bit on our last conversation in July about the 81 Corridor Improvement Project. Can we talk a little bit more about where you are on that? I know there was a meeting, there were some public meetings that you were talking about in July that were going to happen, I think later that month or in August. Can we discuss it a little bit in the next segment?
Absolutely, and I can even tell you how to get to the meeting without getting on the interstate since that's your thing.
See,
We can do that.
now you're really my guy. We're
We can
going to
do that.
take a break and come back and continue our conversation with Ken Slack. He is communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. We're going to talk more with him in just a couple of minutes. Hello, nonprofits. Have a project that's been sitting on the back burner? United Way NSV's Day of Caring returns on September 19th, and your nonprofit can be a part of it. This is the region's largest single-day volunteer event with over 900 volunteers ready to help. Whether it's painting, landscaping, organizing, or repairs, Day of Caring gives your organization hands-on support and saves thousands in maintenance costs. It's simple. Submit your project, let United Way match you with a team, focus more of your budget on what matters most, your mission. Learn more at unitedwaynsv.org/Day of Caring or reach out to dayofcaring@unitedwaynsv.org. Let us send helping hands your way. Welcome back to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. It is VDOT Day on the show. Ken Slack is joining me on the Zooms. He is the communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. We tend to talk to him every couple of months and get updates on road projects and all of the cool, fun things that VDOT is working on. We'll do a snow show here coming up in December, which I can't wait for because I am all about the snow now that the 145
Oh,
degree temperatures are gone.
you can laugh about that, but snow is a four-letter word for anybody who works
Right.
for
Yes.
VDOT.
Well, again, I don't drive on 81, and as soon as the flurries start falling, I go to Zoom and I don't leave the house. So I'm actually your dream person at that time of year because I'm not the one out on the roads getting in your way.
Yeah, we appreciate that. That's usually message number one, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm not ready to talk about the S word just yet.
So let's talk about 81 for a minute. So there is the I-81 Corridor Improvement Program. You were telling me during the break some statistics about 81 that I was surprised about.
Yeah, it is a kind of a dominant roadway for this portion of Virginia. Our district has 150 miles of I-81. We cover 11 counties, and six of them border the interstate. Frederick County, about a mile and a half goes through Warren County, then Shenandoah, then down to Rockingham, Augusta, and Rockbridge. So as it snakes its way through the Shenandoah Valley, we've got 150 miles of it. Virginia has the largest portion of 81, which runs from Knoxville, Tennessee, all the way up to the Canadian border. But we have 325 miles of it from West Virginia all the way down to Tennessee. So this corridor is huge for us. And it's not just the length of it, but it's some areas of steep terrain here in our portion of Virginia. That's certainly true. You're going through different mountain ranges as you go down past Roanoke and down toward New River Valley and points south. It can be challenging. And when you add into that challenging terrain, the percentage of truck traffic that we have, almost half of all Virginia interstate truck traffic is on 81 in Virginia. It carries far more than its share of trucks. And I know that if you're on the interstate, it probably feels like all the trucks are right there within sight. It's not your imagination. We do have a lot of them. Some areas of the interstate run about 25% of the vehicles are commercial tractor trailers, and those 53 footers take up a fair amount of space.
So the 81 corridor improvement program, is it for the entire length of 81 or just 81 in Virginia or just 81 in our area?
81 in Virginia. Other states certainly have programs as well. Pennsylvania has a lot of 81, and I'm sure they have a lot of work going on in their portion. But the I-81 Corridor Improvement Program, Improve 81, is a Commonwealth of Virginia program that was approved in 2019 by the General Assembly and the governor. And the funding mechanism that was put in place allowed us to, right out of the gate, do some operational improvements and then start putting money aside and start doing the design and engineering work for some of the capital improvement projects that we're seeing right now. A total of 65 capital projects through the entire stretch from Winchester down to Bristol.
Those get prioritized how? Is it based on public input? Is it based on the cost of a project or the amount of traffic in a certain area, or D, all of the above?
That's about right. Some folks may be familiar with our Smart Scale program. That basically was signed into law many years ago in Virginia, and it puts an objective scoring system in place for all roadway projects, for new funding for projects. And so it takes in safety improvements, mitigating traffic, improving accessibility. There's environmental scoring that goes on in there. And all of these things go into the benefit score for a project. And that benefit score is basically by the cost of the project. So you have a project that we can identify as, hey, this has a lot of benefit. And if it's not too expensive, it's going to score really well. Now, these projects are not put into the funding mix by VDOT. It's actually the cities, the counties, the regional entities like the Planning District Commission or the metro organizations and things like that. They actually submit applications for transportation funding. It goes through smart scale scoring and gets funded. I use all that to kind of set up that the 81 projects are funded and chosen on a very similar type of formula. It's what we call smart scale like, in that it uses a lot of these objective criteria to decide which projects go where. We hear all the time just 3-lane, both directions, the entire 325 miles. First of all, that probably would not solve all of the problems because there are certainly areas of the interstate that don't need that, but also that's not affordable. We'd be talking many more billions of dollars than we can afford to do. But by targeting some of these areas that have some known issues, whether it's an interchange that needs some attention, whether there's some steep terrain that the trucks struggle to maintain the grade, and then you get differentials in speed that cause crashes, people getting impatient causing crashes. Those kinds of targeted improvements are basically what Improve 81 is all about. We've got a lot of those in place right now and the potential for more projects in the future.
And you've been having these public meetings to get input because while you want to know what's going on, you can't be on all the roads at all the times of the day. So you need to hear from people who are on the roads at different times of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. The year 2025 is all about taking another look at the corridor. And it started way back at the beginning of the year with some pretty in-depth traffic studies. And we're mixing that with several rounds of public input, like you were talking about. We had an online survey back in the spring. We had a mix of in-person meetings and another online survey in July. And this coming October, toward the end of October, we're going to have yet another round of public input where we're going to be showing folks some of the potential improvements that might get funded in another round of Improve 81, probably a couple $1 billion worth potentially. But also, as opposed to what we had in July, we're getting a little bit more focus and kind of refining what the potential solutions might be and starting to prioritize them and starting to put some potential dollar figures on them so that folks know what we're looking at. Traffic engineering and the traffic studies do a whole lot, but we need to hear from folks as well because they're the ones that are using 81 to go to and from work, whether it's traveling for business or for pleasure, daily commutes, whatever it is. They may see things that these traffic studies don't. So we're going to be sharing a lot of information in the month of October as these meetings get a little bit closer. Trust me, if you're paying attention, you won't miss it. We want to make sure that whether you come out in person to one of our public meetings or whether you share some online input, that your voice is heard and you're a part of this process.
It's really important for people to give that feedback. I say it all the time across a wide range of topics that you can't complain about something being broken if you've never told somebody that A, it was broken, or B, offered some sort of solution. And 81 in traffic is one of those things because there's no way, no matter how hard you try, that you're going to know about things that might happen during a very specific time of day on a very specific day of the week because people are stuck in it. So you need them to say, hey, did you know that when this happens, then this happens and it's a problem?
Absolutely. That's why we have so many rounds of public input. And we try to reach out to people in different ways, whether it's through signs that are literally next to the interstate, news releases that we send out, social media, websites, all kinds of things, because we know that people receive information in different ways. But we also need to get this input officially. If you come out to one of our public meetings, you can have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. Not everybody's comfortable at a podium with a microphone and a whole crowd of people around listening to you. That can be nerve-wracking. So you can talk one-on-one with a court reporter and they can record your input. You can jot down your thoughts on a piece of paper, stick it in the box. It goes to us. Granted, we also hear all the time from folks on social media that they go on Facebook or X, and let's be honest, they'll rail on VDOT about something, whether it's flooded basement or an intersection that might not have good sight distance or a pothole. And those are all legitimate things that may not necessarily make it to the public record. So it's really important for folks to be part of the process that really helps shape these projects and makes a difference as to which ones we select. I know we're a big state agency. Sometimes folks think that their voices are not heard, but they are.
It's also important on the flip side of that if you see some sort of solution. So you've refined some of these and you're thinking, okay, this might be a good solution for this particular stretch for this particular reason. People should understand why and how you arrived at that possible solution because I think sometimes on the surface we look at something and go, well, that's stupid. I don't know why they did that. Well, they can ask and then find out we had to do it this way because of this and this. And if we had done it the way that you're suggesting, then it would have been even worse than what you have now. Getting that education and having that information is incredibly valuable either way.
Good example of that are some of the alternative intersections when we might have a roundabout proposed somewhere, or perhaps you were talking earlier about the bridges there in the Front Royal area, and right next to the South Fork Bridge is that quadrant roadway interchange that's still, by the way, the only one of those in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia,
I
and
think
it's
that is
different.
the very first time that you and I ever met because you came to the station and did a live
That's
show.
right.
And for
Yeah.
the life of me, I could not wrap my head around exactly what you were saying. And now I don't even notice that it's there. It's just a regular part of how traffic is when you're coming in and out of town.
There you go. And that took a lot of, in fact, I think there was something like 10 or 12 different options they looked at for ways to improve the traffic flow on 340, 522, where it meets 55. It's running 30,000 vehicles a day. There's really no good way to handle that kind of traffic with traditional signals. So we were looking at some different options. And when it came time, as you were talking about, we reached out to the river, did some in-person meetings to let folks know, by the way, once this is open, you're going to find something different here. And people don't like different, whether they're driving or whether they're trying a new restaurant. Sometimes it gets a little bit dicey. And we definitely hear it when whether we propose a roundabout or a particular intersection or something that's different besides just the usual traffic lights. But again, like we were talking about with particular types of improvements, we don't do it just because, hey, that looks cool, or let's try that, or I learned about that in school and we want to see if we can make it work. These kinds of intersections don't work everywhere, but where they would work and where they could improve safety and help keep traffic flowing more smoothly and more efficiently, we're willing to give it a shot. And if folks can be patient with us and are willing to try to learn something a little bit different in the long term, it can have some big benefits.
And let's be honest, it's not the roundabout's fault. It's the people
Well,
who clearly didn't have to go on a roundabout during their driving test and taking their learning to drive courses because they're pretty simple to follow if you are familiar with them at all. And now we have a lot of them. It's like you never had any, and then all of a sudden they're everywhere. I'm like, where did all these roundabouts come from?
Yeah, in other parts of the country, certainly other parts of the world, but even other states use lots of different kinds of intersections that we haven't traditionally used as much in Virginia. So there could be something different to learn. The main thing with some of these intersections is that they are reducing what they call the conflict points. One of the problems at a traditional intersection, whether it's a stop sign or a stoplight, is that quite often the kind of crash you might have is going to be a head-on crash or a T-bone, and those can be devastating. But when you have a crash at a roundabout, it's usually a side swipe or a rear end crash. And that's not good either, but it's also a lot less damage and a lot less injury involved in those kinds of things. So it's weighing some of these different kinds of options. And no, we're not going to try to force a roundabout somewhere where it wouldn't work. But there are times when some of these innovative intersections, if you're willing to give it a shot and be patient with it and learn how to navigate it, sometimes it might only take one time through there. And you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. Give it a shot because there can be some benefits to you and your family and other motorists by keeping them safer through there.
Is there a place online on the VDOT website or somewhere else that people can go and learn more about the 81 Corridor Improvement Program?
People are going to assume that I set you up with that question. Actually, the 81 program has its own dedicated website. You just go on in your search bar and type Improve 81, like all one word, Improve 81. It will take you to improve81.org, and that is the central hub for the entire program. Now, it does cover all 325 miles through the Stanton District, Salem District, Bristol District, state line to state line. But it has interactive maps that you can see all the different projects and what their status is, whether they're under construction, what's planned, all kinds of cool photos. We've got newsletters, videos, podcasts, all kinds of things. We're not trying to compete with you in the podcast game, but we do have some great information on there. And that's also a good place for folks to go to find out about some of the meetings that we were talking about earlier. So if you want to stay up to date on what's happening with the program and what might happen next, improve81.org. And while we're on that topic, we were just talking about alternative intersections or innovative intersections. If you type in Google innovative intersection, we have a page on our main VDOT website that talks about all these kinds of intersections. They have some diagrams, explanations, and sometimes some simulation videos that you can see how they work. So all kinds of good stuff out there.
Thank you for taking the time to educate me on some of this stuff today. I guess I won't see you again until the snow show, so I'm going to start making a list of all of my questions.
Sounds good. We'll be ready, and I won't be in short sleeves, I guess, next time. I'll be in a parka or something.
Hey, it could happen.
So.
Stranger weather things have happened. We could still be in short sleeves by the 1st of December.
And this is Virginia, so it could very well snow and then be 65 the next day. So who knows?
That's true. Yes, we could already have 6 feet of snow before we even talk again in December.
Don't do that.
And if that's the case, stay home, people. Don't go out on the road. Stay home and let them get the roads cleared.
Message number 1.
I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today to chat with Martha from the Barns of Rose Hill about some of their upcoming performances and programs. So meet me back here for that just a few minutes after noon.